The Bonneville Salt Flats stretch for over 30,000 acres of pure white nothing. It's so flat you can see the curvature of the earth, so bright it'll blind you without sunglasses, so empty it makes you understand what the word desolation really means. I patrolled Interstate 80 through that wasteland for 18 years, and I can tell you, the desert plays tricks on your eyes. Mirages are normal. Heat shimmer that looks like water, distant mountains that seem to float, upside-down images of cars that aren't there. But what if I told you that some of those mirages are real? What if some drivers really are seeing cities that don't exist on any map? Cities that shouldn't exist in the middle of the salt? And what if the people who drive toward those cities never come back? If you're watching this from Utah, or if you've ever driven I-80 across the salt flats, drop a comment. Have you ever seen something out there that shouldn't be? A building, a town, lights where there should be nothing but white salt and blue sky? Because what I'm about to tell you isn't unique. It's been happening since the pioneers crossed these flats in the 1840s. My name is Sergeant Rachel Blackwood, Utah Highway Patrol, retired. And this is why I'll never cross the Bonneville Salt Flats again. Not for any amount of money, not for any reason. August in the Bonneville Salt Flats is like driving across the surface of the sun. The temperature hits 105 degrees by noon. The salt reflects every bit of that heat back up at you, and the white stretches so far in every direction that you lose all sense of scale and distance. I'd been with the Utah Highway Patrol for 12 years by August 2021. Working the I-80 corridor from Salt Lake City to the Nevada border. It's a lonely stretch even by Utah standards, but the section crossing the salt flats is something else entirely. 40 miles of absolute nothing. Most people blast through at 80 miles per hour, eager to get to the other side. But every year we lose a few. Not to accidents usually, they just disappear. Their cars are found on the side of the road or off in the salt, empty, keys still in the ignition, no sign of the drivers. The official explanations vary. Dehydration, disorientation, walking into the desert and getting lost. But those of us who patrol that stretch regularly know there's more to it. It was August 17th, 2021, a Tuesday, when everything changed. I was working the day shift, had just passed the Bonneville Speedway exit where they set all those land speed records, when I got a call about an abandoned vehicle at mile marker 10. That's right in the heart of the flats, where the salt stretches unbroken to the horizon in every direction. I found the car easily enough. A blue Honda Civic with California plates, parked on the shoulder with the driver door hanging open. The engine was still running, AC blasting, trying futilely to cool the desert air. I ran the plates, Jennifer Martinez, 28, from San Diego. According to the rental agreement in the glove compartment, she'd picked up the car in Salt Lake City that morning, heading to Reno. I checked the immediate area, but there were no footprints leading away from the vehicle. That should have been impossible. The salt crust near the road is soft enough to leave clear impressions. But except for her footprints from the driver's side to about 10 feet from the car, where they simply stopped mid-stride, there was nothing. I called it in, requested aerial support to search for Miss Martinez. While I waited, I examined the area where her footprints ended. The salt there looked different, crystallized in an unusual pattern, almost like frozen ripples in water. When I knelt to look closer, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Reflected in those crystal formations was a city skyline. Not Salt Lake City. Not any city I recognized. Tall spires of what looked like glass or crystal, architecturally impossible buildings that seemed to twist into the sky, and lights. Thousands of lights despite it being broad daylight. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again. The reflection was gone. just regular salt crystals baking in the sun. But I knew what I'd seen. The helicopter arrived 20 minutes later, swept the area for 2 hours. No sign of Jennifer Martinez. She'd vanished into the white expanse as completely as if she'd never existed. Her phone was still in the car, wallet on the passenger seat. Even a half-drunk iced coffee in the cup holder, ice not even fully melted. That night, I did something I shouldn't have. I went back to mile marker 10, but this time I brought my personal equipment. A high-end camera with thermal imaging, a drone, and a device I'd bought online that supposedly detected electromagnetic anomalies. I know it sounds crazy, but after 12 years of finding abandoned cars in the exact same area, of reading reports going back decades about missing drivers, I needed answers. I set up at the exact spot where Jennifer Martinez's footprints had ended. The sun was setting, turning the white salt orange and pink, and that's when I saw them. The mirages. But these weren't normal heat distortions. As the temperature dropped and the light faded, I could see structures in the distance. A city, just like the one I'd seen reflected in the salt, shimmering on the horizon. I trained my camera on it, zooming in as far as the lens would allow. Through the viewfinder, the city became clearer. The architecture was unlike anything on Earth. Buildings that spiraled into impossible geometries, bridges that connected to nothing, streets that folded back on themselves. And it was inhabited. I could see figures moving, vehicles that floated rather than drove, lights that pulsed in patterns that seemed almost like communication. My electromagnetic detector was going haywire, registering fields that shouldn't exist in nature. The drone footage later showed something even stranger. From above, the salt flats weren't uniform. There were patterns, massive geometric designs that could only be seen from altitude, all centered on mile marker 10. Then my radio crackled to life. It should have been silent. I was off duty, using my personal vehicle. But a voice came through, clear as day. "Officer Blackwood, please respond." "This is New Zion Emergency Dispatch. We have you on approach to the city limits. Please state your purpose for visiting." My blood went cold. New Zion. That was the name of a Mormon settlement that had been established in the Salt Flats in 1847. According to historical records, the entire settlement had vanished in 1849. 47 men, women, and children just disappeared one night. Their buildings were found the next morning, perfectly preserved but empty, sitting in the middle of the salt where no buildings should be. The structures were dismantled, and the incident was largely covered up, attributed to Native American raids or migration to California for the gold rush. "This is Sergeant Blackwood," I responded, not sure why I was playing along. "I'm investigating a missing person." "Jennifer Martinez, yes. She arrived this morning. She's safe, officer. She's chosen to stay. Many do, once they see what we've built here." "Where is here exactly?" "You can see us, can't you?" "The city? You're one of the few who can. Most drive past, seeing nothing but salt and heat. But some, like you, like Miss Martinez, can perceive the fold. The fold. The place where space folds back on itself. Where our city exists parallel to your world, occupying the same coordinates but in a different dimensional phase. The Mormon pioneers didn't found New Zion, officer. They found it. It was already here, had been here for millennia. They just accidentally discovered how to see it, how to enter it." I looked at the city shimmering on the horizon. It was getting clearer as the sky darkened, more solid, more real. The road seemed to extend toward it, a path of black asphalt that shouldn't exist cutting across the salt. "If I follow that road," I asked, "can I get Jennifer Martinez back?" "You can try. But I should warn you, officer. Time moves differently in New Zion. What feels like hours here could be days, weeks, or even years in your world. And once you've entered, once you've seen our city as it truly is, part of you will always remain. You'll be like the mirages, partially here, partially there, never fully in either world. I thought about Jennifer Martinez, about all the missing drivers over the years. Were they all in this new Zion? This impossible city that existed in a fold in space? How many people are there? How many have crossed over? Thousands. The pioneers who found us in 1847. Travelers from your highways. Indigenous peoples who knew of this place long before your civilization. And others. Beings from other folds, other dimensions that intersect here. New Zion is a crossroads, officer. A place where all possible paths meet. My thermal camera was picking up heat signatures now, hundreds of them, in a city that wasn't supposed to exist. The drone footage showed the black road extending from the highway directly toward the city. And strangest of all, I could see other vehicles on that road. Modern cars, pioneer wagons, vehicles that didn't look entirely terrestrial, all traveling toward New Zion. I made a decision that would define the rest of my life. I got back in my vehicle and started driving toward the city. The moment my tires left the actual highway and hit that impossible black road, everything changed. The temperature dropped 20 degrees instantly. My radio exploded with voices, dispatch calls from different eras, CB chatter in languages that didn't exist, emergency broadcasts from futures that might never happen. The city grew larger as I approached, revealing its impossible scale. The buildings weren't just tall. They extended in directions that hurt to think about. Some grew down into the salt as well as up, creating mirror structures that made it unclear which was real and which was reflection. Some phased in and out of existence, solid one moment, translucent the next. As I reached what seemed to be the city limits, marked by an arch made of crystallized salt that sparkled with internal light, a figure stepped into the road. I slammed on the brakes, stopping just feet from them. It was a woman in pioneer dress, but her eyes were ancient, older than her appearance suggested. She smiled at me with too many teeth. "Welcome to New Zion, Officer Blackwood. We've been expecting you. You see, Jennifer Martinez wasn't the first to go missing this week. You've been searching for 17 missing persons over the last 3 months, all last seen on this stretch of I-80. They're all here. They're all safe. They've all chosen to stay. Chosen or trapped." Her smile widened. Is there a difference? When paradise is offered, does it matter if you can't leave? Your world is linear, limited, bound by physics and time. Here, we exist in all possibilities simultaneously. Here, the dead live, the past is present, and the future is negotiable. I need to speak with Jennifer Martinez. I need to confirm she's safe. Of course. She's in the integration center with the others. Please, follow me. I got out of my vehicle, my hand instinctively resting on my service weapon, though I suspected it would be useless here. The moment my feet touched the ground of New Zion, I felt the change. Reality was thinner here, more flexible. I could feel myself existing in multiple states at once. The me that was here, the me that was still on the highway, the me that had never become a cop, the me that had died in Afghanistan, all equally real, all equally present. The pioneer woman led me through streets that defied navigation. We'd walk forward, but somehow end up to the left of where we started. We'd climb stairs that led down, pass through doors that opened onto the same room we'd just left, but from a different angle. The other inhabitants of New Zion watched us pass. Humans from different eras, beings that weren't quite human, entities that might have been human once but had been transformed by prolonged exposure to this dimensional fold. Here, the woman said, stopping at a building that looked like a modern office structure crossed with a Mormon temple, crossed with something M.C. Escher might have designed in a fever dream. The new arrivals are inside. I entered, finding myself in a room that was simultaneously vast and intimate. 17 people sat in chairs that floated a few inches off the ground, their eyes glazed with the kind of wonder you see in religious converts or drug addicts. Jennifer Martinez was among them, still in the shorts and t-shirt she'd been wearing when she disappeared, but something was different. She was partially translucent, existing in multiple phases at once. "Miss Martinez," I said, approaching slowly. "I'm Sergeant Blackwood with the Utah Highway Patrol. Your family is worried about you. I'm here to bring you home." She looked at me, and her eyes were filled with stars. Literally filled with stars like windows into deep space. "Home?" she said, her voice echoing from multiple versions of herself. "This is home. This has always been home. We just forgot how to find it. But the city called to us, showed us the way. Can't you feel it, officer? The pull, the rightness of this place? I could feel it." That was the terrifying part. New Zion felt more real than the world I'd left behind, more correct. Like this was how reality was supposed to be, and everything else was the distortion. The Integration Center, as they called it, was a place where the laws of physics went to die. The 17 missing persons sat in their floating chairs, but they also stood, walked, lay down, and existed in states that didn't have names, all simultaneously. Each person was a quantum superposition of themselves, experiencing every possible version of their existence at once. "Miss Martinez," I tried again, focusing on the version of her that seemed most solid. "You've been missing for 12 hours. Your mother has been calling the police nonstop. You were driving to a job interview in Reno. Remember?" "Reno," she said, as if tasting a foreign word. "Yes, I was going to Reno." But then I saw the city. It was so beautiful, officer. Glass towers that sang in harmonies human ears have never heard. Streets paved with crystallized time. And the people, they've transcended everything we think we know about existence. A man materialized next to me, or maybe he'd always been there and I just hadn't perceived him until now. He wore a business suit that seemed to be cut from liquid light, and his face kept shifting between different ethnicities and ages. "Sergeant Blackwood," he said in a voice that harmonized with itself. "I'm Mayor Whitman, or at least that's what I was called in your reality. Here, names are more fluid. Whitman, as in Josiah Whitman, the leader of the New Zion settlement that disappeared in 1849. He smiled, his face settling on the appearance of a man in his 50s with kind eyes and pioneer-era features. "Time is relative, Sergeant. I've been mayor of New Zion for 172 years, or 15 minutes, or since before the salt flats formed, depending on your frame of reference. We didn't disappear in 1849. We evolved. We found the fold and chose to step through. And now you're luring travelers off the highway? Luring?" He seemed genuinely offended. "We're offering salvation. Your world is dying, Sergeant. Climate change, wars, pandemics, social collapse. We offer an alternative, a place where humanity can evolve beyond its physical limitations, by trapping them in a dimensional anomaly, by freeing them from the prison of linear existence. Let me show you something." He waved his hand, and the room transformed. Suddenly, I could see beyond the Integration Center, beyond New Zion, to a vast network of folded spaces. There were hundreds of cities like this one, each existing in their own dimensional pocket, all connected by roads that shouldn't exist. I saw one in the Sahara Desert, where Egyptian pyramids grew like living things. Another in Siberia, where a Soviet-era city had merged with something ancient and non-human. Another beneath the ocean, where Atlantis wasn't myth, but a thriving metropolis of water breathers and air breathers living in harmony. Every desert, every empty space on your maps hides one of these folds, Whitman explained. Places where reality is thin, where the barriers between dimensions can be crossed. The ancient peoples knew about them. That's why so many civilizations built their monuments in deserts. They were marking the doorways. And everyone who enters is trapped? Not trapped, transformed. Watch. He gestured to one of the missing persons, an elderly man named Harold Foster, who'd disappeared 3 days ago. Harold stood up from his floating chair, all versions of him standing simultaneously, and began to change. His aged body grew younger in some iterations, older in others. In one version, he sprouted wings, in another, he became pure energy. In yet another, he remained human, but gained the ability to perceive time as a navigable dimension. This is what we offer, Whitman said. The chance to become everything you could possibly be, all at once. But at what cost? They can never go home. Home is a concept that loses meaning when you exist in all possible homes simultaneously. Harold is here, but he's also at his house in Provo, also in the car driving to visit his grandchildren, also already dead, also not yet born. He experiences all of it. I watched Harold's many forms, saw the ecstasy and terror warring on his faces. He's going insane. He's adapting. The human mind isn't meant to perceive this much reality at once, true. But we've developed methods to help with the integration. Within a few days, or centuries, or nanoseconds, he'll stabilize. He'll learn to navigate his multiple existences. I turned to Jennifer Martinez. Is this what you want? To become that? She looked at Harold, then at me. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw fear flicker across her features. I don't know anymore. When I first saw the city, it was so clear. It was everything I'd ever wanted, but now... The doubt is normal, Whitman said quickly. Integration is always challenging at first. But Jennifer, remember what you saw when you first arrived. The beauty, the possibility, the freedom from all of Earth's limitations. I remember, she said, but her voice was uncertain. I saw my opportunity. Jennifer, you have a choice. You can come back with me. Leave this place before the integration is complete. She can't, Whitman said, his friendly demeanor cooling. Once someone enters New Zion, they begin existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. If she leaves now, she'll be torn apart, scattered across realities. Unless, a new voice said, and another figure materialized. This one was indigenous, wearing traditional dress but also modern tactical gear, existing in multiple time periods at once. Unless someone anchors her. Whitman's expression darkened. Joseph, you have no authority here. Joseph, and somehow I knew he was Joseph Paiute, a spiritual leader whose tribe had lived near the salt flats for thousands of years, smiled. I have all the authority I need. My people knew about the fold long before your pioneers stumbled into it. We knew how to enter, and more importantly, we knew how to leave. He turned to me. Sergeant Blackwood, you're partially integrated now. You exist in multiple states, but you're also anchored to your reality by duty, by purpose. You can be a lifeline for those who want to leave. That's not possible, Whitman protested. The fold doesn't work that way. The fold works however we believe it works, Joseph countered. That's what you've never understood, Josiah. This place responds to will, to intention. You've built your city through collective belief in its existence. But that same power can be used to leave. He approached Jennifer, placing a hand that existed in multiple phases on her shoulder. Child, what do you truly want? Not what the city makes you want, not what the possibilities seduce you with. What does your core self, your original self, desire? Jennifer's multiple forms began to converge, pulling together into a more singular existence. I want to go to my job interview, she said, her voice growing stronger. I want to call my mom. I want to live my life even if it's limited, even if it's linear. I want to be human. The room shook. New Zion itself seemed to react to her declaration. The buildings outside writhing like living things. Whitman's form fragmented, showing multiple versions of himself, the kindly mayor, the desperate cult leader, the evolved being, the terrified pioneer who'd gotten in over his head. You can't, he shouted with dozens of mouths. If people start leaving, if they reject the evolution, the city will collapse. We'll all collapse. We exist through consensus reality. Every person who leaves weakens the fold. Then maybe it should collapse, Joseph said calmly. Maybe trapping souls in a dimensional anomaly isn't evolution. Maybe it's just another form of death. He turned to the 17 missing persons. You all have a choice. Stay and become something beyond human, or return and remain wonderfully, limitedly, beautifully human. The room erupted into chaos. Some of the missing persons began to solidify, choosing humanity. Others fragmented further, embracing the transformation. Harold Foster split completely. One version walking toward the door, another ascending into pure energy, a third simply vanishing. Sergeant, Joseph said urgently, those who want to leave need an anchor. You need to physically connect them to your reality. I understood instinctively. I grabbed Jennifer Martinez's hand. It felt like holding smoke and steel simultaneously. Then I reached for others who were moving toward us. A truck driver named Bill, a family of 3 on vacation, a teenager who'd been making a TikTok video about the salt flats when he saw the city. 7 in total chose to return. The moment we formed our human chain, I felt the pull of our reality. It was weaker than New Zion's pull, but it was there. The weight of physics, the limitation of time, the beautiful constraints of normal existence. Now walk, Joseph instructed. Walk back to your vehicle. Don't look back. Don't listen to Whitman's pleas, just walk. We started moving, but it was like walking through thick honey that existed in multiple dimensions. Each step forward also took us sideways, up, down, and through directions that didn't have names. Whitman's voice followed us, sometimes pleading, sometimes threatening. You're destroying paradise. You're condemning them to death and suffering. In your world, Jennifer will age and die. Here, she could have lived forever. Jennifer squeezed my hand tighter. I want to age, she said firmly. I want to experience time sequentially. I want to not know what happens next. The city began to shift around us, trying to prevent our exit. Streets rearranged themselves. Buildings moved to block our path. The ground itself tried to swallow us. But Joseph walked beside us, speaking in what I later learned was an ancient Paiute dialect, and each word seemed to solidify reality around us. Your ancestors knew the truth, he told me as we walked. The Mormon pioneers who founded New Zion. They thought they were creating a holy city, but they were actually creating a trap. The fold responded to their fervent belief, their desperate desire for a promised land. It gave them exactly what they wanted, a perfect city. But perfection is static. Perfection doesn't grow, doesn't change, doesn't live. It just exists. We reached my vehicle, which looked strange now. Simultaneously, a modern police SUV and a covered wagon, and something that might have been from a future that hadn't happened yet. I helped the 7 rescued people inside, though the interior seemed to expand to accommodate them all. "Drive," Joseph commanded. "Follow the black road back, but keep your eyes on the horizon. Look for the real I-80. It's still there, just hidden beneath layers of possibility." I started the engine, or engines, plural, as the vehicle existed in multiple states. We began moving, and New Zion began to fade. Or rather, we began to fade from New Zion. The city grew translucent, its impossible architecture becoming misty and uncertain. But Whitman wasn't giving up. He appeared on the road ahead of us, no longer maintaining any pretense of human form. He was a convergence of possibilities, a living intersection of dimensions. "You can't leave," he screamed, with the voice of avalanches and whispers. "The fold won't let you. You're part of it now." That's when I noticed something. The 7 people I was rescuing were starting to fragment again. The pull of New Zion was reasserting itself, trying to drag them back into multiplicity. "They need a stronger anchor," Joseph said urgently. "Something from their original reality, something that defines who they were before they saw the city." I grabbed my radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 237. I need you to patch me through to some phone numbers. Emergency protocol." What followed was surreal even by the standards of what was already happening. As we drove through folding space, I had dispatch connect me to the families of the missing persons. One by one, voices from the real world came through my radio. "Jennifer? Mija, is that you?" Jennifer's mother's voice cut through dimensions like a knife. "Mom!" Jennifer solidified instantly, becoming singular, becoming real. Each connection to the outside world strengthened our passengers' hold on reality. A wife's voice, a child's laugh, a parent's worry. These became lifelines, pulling them back from the brink of dimensional dissolution. Whitman made one last attempt to stop us. The road ahead transformed into a wall of crystallized salt, impossibly high, impossibly thick. We were going to crash into it at 60 miles per hour. "Trust the road," Joseph said calmly. "Remember, this place responds to will. Believe you can pass through, and you will." I pressed the accelerator harder, speeding toward the wall. The 7 passengers screamed. Even Joseph looked concerned, but I held on to one thought. We are going home. We hit the wall and passed through it like it was mist. On the other side was the familiar stretch of I-80, the normal salt flats gleaming white in the afternoon sun. Wait, afternoon? We'd been in New Zion for what felt like hours, but my dashboard clock showed we'd only been gone for 3 minutes. I pulled over at the next safe spot, my hands shaking. The 7 rescued people were all there, all solid, all singular. They looked dazed, but whole. Jennifer Martinez was crying, clutching her phone, already calling her mother. Joseph was gone. He'd never gotten in the vehicle, I realized. He'd stayed in the fold, or maybe he existed partially in both places, keeping the door open for others who might want to leave. In my rear-view mirror, I could still see New Zion, faint as a daydream, shimmering on the horizon. It would always be there, I knew, waiting, calling. Some would answer and find what they thought was paradise. Others would be trapped by their own desire for transcendence. But 7 people were going home today. 7 people had chosen the beautiful limitation of being human. The debriefing was held at the Highway Patrol headquarters in Salt Lake City, but it wasn't a normal debriefing. There were people there I'd never seen before, officials who didn't introduce themselves, scientists who took notes in languages I didn't recognize, and a woman in military uniform whose insignia didn't match any branch I knew. Captain Derek Morgan, my direct supervisor for the past 8 years, looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. He sat across from me in the conference room, surrounded by classified files that were older than the state of Utah itself. "Rachel," he began, then stopped, rubbing his face. "How much of your report is accurate? The dimensional fold, the city, the rescue." "Every word, Captain." The woman in the strange uniform leaned forward. She had silver hair but a young face, creating an unsettling ageless quality. "Sergeant Blackwood, I'm Director Chen from Project Causeway. We've been monitoring the Bonneville anomaly since 1946. 1946? But the Mormon settlement disappeared in 1849. "The anomaly predates human civilization," she replied. "But 1946 was when it became active again. The nuclear test at the Nevada test site, just 300 miles away, created electromagnetic pulses that activated something, made the fold more accessible. Since then, we've documented over 3,000 disappearances." She pulled out a tablet, showing me satellite images of the salt flats. But these weren't normal images. They showed heat signatures, electromagnetic patterns, and something else. A massive, geometric pattern etched into the salt, visible only from specific spectrums. "This is what the Bonneville salt flats really look like," she said. "A massive portal, dormant most of the time, but occasionally opening to allow passage between dimensions. Your New Zion is just one of 17 cities we've detected in the fold." 17? Each one founded by different groups throughout history. Spanish conquistadors who got lost in 1541 established Ciudad de la Sal. Chinese railroad workers from the 1860s built what they call the Jade Pavilion. A group of hippies from 1969 created something they call the Eternal Festival, all existing in the same space but different dimensional phases. Captain Morgan added, "Rachel, the 7 people you brought back, they're all exhibiting unusual symptoms. They can still partially see the fold. Sometimes they exist in 2 places at once. The Martinez woman keeps phasing in and out of reality. They were partially integrated. It might be permanent." Director Chen nodded. "This is our concern. Every person who enters and leaves the fold becomes a potential doorway. If enough partially integrated individuals exist in our reality, the barrier between dimensions could collapse entirely." "So, what are you saying? We should have left them there?" "I'm saying," Chen replied carefully, "that your rescue might have larger implications than you realized. Joseph Paiute knew this. It's why his people have guarded the knowledge of the fold for millennia, only allowing certain individuals to cross." She pulled up another file. "Joseph Paiute, also known as Joseph Sees Between, also known as a dozen other names throughout history. We have photographs of him from 1897, 1923, 1955, 1978, and last week. He hasn't aged a day. He lives in the fold. He lives between, neither fully in our reality nor theirs. He's what we call a bridge walker, someone who maintains the balance between dimensions, and according to our sources, he chose you for a reason." Before I could ask what that meant, alarms started blaring. Not just in the building, but my radio, my phone, every electronic device in the room erupted with emergency signals. "Multiple 911 calls from I-80, a dispatcher's voice crackled through. "Reports of a city appearing in the salt flats. Visible to everyone. Repeat, the anomaly is fully visible. We rushed to the windows. Even from Salt Lake City, 70 miles away, we could see it. New Zion and all 17 hidden cities had materialized fully in our reality. their impossible architectures rising from the salt like mirages made solid. The sky above them rippled with aurora-like lights despite it being midday. "This is what we were afraid of," Chen said grimly. "The rescue destabilized the fold. The cities are trying to fully manifest in our dimension." My phone rang. The caller ID showed as impossible symbols that hurt to look at, but somehow I knew who it was. Joseph? Sergeant Blackwood. His voice sounded strained, like he was holding something immense at bay. "The balance is broken. Whitman is making his move. He's trying to force New Zion and all the Fold cities into your reality. If he succeeds, what happens? Two incompatible realities trying to occupy the same space. The physics alone would create an explosion that would make nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. But more than that, every person on Earth would be forcibly integrated into the Fold. Humanity would cease to exist as singular beings. How do we stop it? You don't. You can't. But you can redirect it. The 7 people you saved, they're the key. They've experienced both realities and chose yours. They can act as anchors, but only if they're willing to return to the Fold one more time. I'm not sending them back to that place. Not sending. Leading, Rachel, you're partially integrated too, more than you realize. When you formed that human chain to rescue them, you didn't just anchor them to reality. You anchored reality to yourself. You've become a bridge walker like me, and right now, you're the only one who can enter the Fold and negotiate with all 17 cities. Director Chen was already mobilizing resources. We're evacuating a 50-mile radius around the Salt Flats. If this goes wrong. It won't, I said with more confidence than I felt. Get me the 7 people I rescued, and I need a direct line to Joseph. Within an hour, we were assembled at the edge of the manifestation zone. The 7 rescued individuals looked terrified but determined. Jennifer Martinez kept flickering between solid and translucent, but her jaw was set with resolve. "We have to go back?" she asked. "We have to save both worlds," I replied. "When we chose to leave, we created an imbalance. Now we need to restore it." Bill, the truck driver, spat tobacco juice onto the salt. "Well, hell, I survived Nam. I suppose I can survive this." The family of 3, the Johnsons from Idaho, held hands tightly. "Together," the father said. "Whatever happens, we stay together." The teenager, Marcus, was live-streaming everything on his phone. "If I die in an interdimensional city, at least I'll go viral," he said with forced bravado. We walked toward the manifestation. The moment we crossed the threshold, reality shattered and reformed around us. We weren't in one city, but all 17 simultaneously. I could see Spanish conquistadors debating with Chinese railroad workers, Mormon pioneers arguing with hippies, and beings that had never been human engaged in commerce with entities that had forgotten how to be human. And in the center of it all was Whitman, but not as I'd seen him before. He had become a nexus, a living intersection of all 17 cities. He was part Spanish noble, part Mormon prophet, part cosmic entity, part living architecture. He had become the Fold itself. "You came back," he said with voices like continental drift. "I knew you would. The Fold always reclaims what belongs to it." "We're not here to stay," I announced, my voice somehow carrying across all 17 cities. "We're here to negotiate." "Negotiate?" 17 different versions of laughter echoed through dimensional space. What could you possibly offer? "Balance," Joseph's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. He manifested beside us, existing more solidly than I'd ever seen him. The Fold was never meant to fully manifest in either reality. It's a between space, a bridge. You've forgotten that, Josiah. I've evolved beyond such limitations. No. Jennifer Martinez stepped forward, her form solidifying with determination. You've become a prison. These cities, these people, they're not free. They're trapped in your vision of paradise. She was right. Now that I was fully in the fold again, I could see it clearly. The inhabitants of all 17 cities moved in patterns, like programs running on loops. They had infinite possibility, but no actual choice. They could be anything except themselves. We propose a different solution, I said. The fold remains what it was meant to be, a place between. People can visit, can experience expansion, can taste transcendence. But they also get to leave, to choose their limitations, to be human. Impossible, Whitman raged, his form growing larger, more chaotic. Once integrated, always integrated. That's where you're wrong, Marcus said, surprising everyone. The teenager held up his phone, which somehow still had signal despite being in a dimensional fold. I've been streaming this whole time. Millions of people are watching. They're seeing the cities, seeing the fold, seeing you. And you know what most of the comments say? Cool special effects, but I'd never want to live there. Humanity is choosing, Whitman. They're choosing their reality over yours. The phone screen showed the view count, 47 million and climbing. The comments scrolled by impossibly fast, but the sentiment was clear. Wonder, yes. Awe, certainly. But also rejection. Humanity, when faced with transcendence, was collectively saying, thanks, but no thanks. Whitman's form began to destabilize. The 17 cities started to separate, pulling apart from their forced convergence. The fold itself was responding to the collective will of millions of viewers choosing mundane reality over dimensional transcendence. No, Whitman screamed. They don't understand what they're rejecting. They understand perfectly, Joseph said calmly. They're rejecting the loss of self. Humans are beautifully, stubbornly individual. Your paradise requires them to give that up. The Johnsons stepped forward as a family unit. We've seen both worlds, Mrs. Johnson said, and we choose the one where we age, where we struggle, where we're limited. Because those limitations define us. One by one, each of the 7 spoke their choice. With each declaration, the fold stabilized but also separated from our reality. The cities began to fade from the salt flats, returning to their dimensional pocket. But Whitman wasn't giving up. He reached out with tendrils of dimensional energy, trying to grab us, to force us to stay. If I can't have willing converts, I'll take unwilling ones. That's when something unexpected happened. The inhabitants of the 17 cities, those trapped souls who'd been integrated for decades or centuries, began to wake up. Our presence, our choice to leave and return, had shown them that choice was possible. A Spanish conquistador remembered his name. A Chinese railroad worker recalled his family. A hippie from the Eternal Festival remembered that festivals are supposed to end. One by one, they began choosing. Some chose to stay, accepting their transformation. But many chose to leave, to return to their times or to move forward to ours. The fold couldn't maintain itself against so much individual will. Whitman's form began to collapse, pulled in 17 different directions by the separating cities. This isn't over, he said, his voice fracturing across dimensions. The fold is eternal. It will find other guardians, other prophets. Humanity will evolve whether it wants to or not. Maybe, Joseph replied, but not today. And not through force. With a sound like reality itself sighing, the manifestation ended. The 17 cities vanished from the salt flats, returning to their hidden dimension. But they were different now. I could feel it. They were no longer prison paradises, but way stations. Places people could visit but also leave. We stood on the white salt under the normal Utah sun. The 7 people I'd rescued were all solid, all singular. They were changed. They would always be able to see a little beyond normal reality, but they were human. "It's not over," Joseph said quietly to me. Whitman was right about one thing. The fold is eternal. It will always be there, always calling to those who seek something beyond humanity. "And we'll be there to make sure they have a choice," I replied. He smiled. "We?" I looked at my hands. They were solid but also not, existing primarily in our reality but with a foothold in the fold. I had become like Joseph, a bridge walker. "Someone needs to patrol that border," I said. "Make sure people can visit paradise, but also leave it." "It's a lonely job," he warned. "You'll age slower, see more, exist partially in multiple realities. You'll never be fully human again. But I'll be human enough, and that's what matters." I still patrol I-80 through the Bonneville Salt Flats, but my jurisdiction has expanded beyond what any normal officer could handle. I exist partially in 17 different dimensional phases, monitoring the fold cities that hide just beyond human perception. My official title is still Sergeant Rachel Blackwood, Utah Highway Patrol, but Director Chen's Project Causeway has given me another designation, Bridgewalker 7. There are 12 of us now, spread across the world's thin places. Joseph trains us, though training isn't quite the right word for learning to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously while maintaining your sanity. It's more like guided dissolution and reconstitution of self. Every morning, I wake up in my apartment in Salt Lake City, but I also wake up in New Zion, in Ciudad de la Sal, in the Jade Pavilion, and in realities that don't have names yet. The 7 people I rescued from the fold have become something unprecedented, living anchors between dimensions. Jennifer Martinez works as a consultant for Project Causeway now. She can phase between realities at will, making her invaluable for rescue operations. Just last month, she helped me retrieve a tour bus full of Japanese tourists who'd accidentally driven into the Eternal Festival. They'd been there for what felt like 3 years, but was only 3 hours in our time. Bill, the truck driver, still drives his routes, but now he can see the fold roads. He helps guide other truckers around the dangerous spots, the places where reality is so thin you could fall through without noticing. He's saved 17 people this year alone, though they never know it. To them, he's just a friendly voice on the CB radio suggesting they take a different route. The Johnson family moved away from Utah, said they needed distance from the fold. But their daughter, Emma, now 15, has started showing abilities. She can see probability streams, all the possible futures spreading out from each moment. Director Chen wants to recruit her when she's older. I hope she chooses a normal life instead, but I suspect the fold has already marked her. Marcus, the teenager, became famous from his live stream. He has his own YouTube channel now, Between Worlds with Marcus. Most people think it's elaborate special effects, but those who know. He helps prepare people who are about to enter thin places, teaching them how to maintain their singular identity when reality tries to fragment them. The old couple, Harold and Martha Foster, chose differently. After experiencing the fold, they decided their time in linear reality was complete. On their 60th wedding anniversary, they walked back into the salt flats, hand in hand, and let themselves dissolve into light. They exist now as pure consciousness in the fold, together forever in a way that transcends physical existence. It was their choice, and I've learned to respect that. But my work isn't just about managing the people who've been touched by the fold. It's about monitoring Whitman, He didn't die when the cities separated. How can something that exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously die? He reformed, but weaker, more fragmented. Each city now has a piece of him. The Mormon prophet in New Zion, the conquistador in Ciudad de la Salle, the cosmic entity in cities that predated human arrival on Earth. They plot and scheme, trying to find a way to reconverge, to force the fold fully into our reality. Every night at 3 a.m., I do my rounds, not in a patrol car, but walking the spaces between spaces. I check the barriers, make sure the fold cities remain accessible but separate. Sometimes I find people who've wandered in accidentally, insomniacs who drove too far into the desert, drug users whose altered consciousness made them susceptible to the fold's call, or simply those who've always felt they didn't belong in normal reality. Most I guide back out. Some choose to stay. That's the new protocol, conscious, informed choice. We explain what the fold is, what integration means, what they'll gain and what they'll lose. About 70% choose to return to linear reality. The others step through willingly, becoming citizens of impossible cities. Last week, I encountered something new. A child, maybe 8 years old, standing in the middle of I-80 at 3:33 a.m. She wasn't from our reality or from any of the 17 fold cities. She was from somewhere else entirely, a dimension where humans had evolved differently. She had eyes that could see in spectrums we don't have names for, and spoke in mathematics rather than words. "I'm lost," she said, though the equation she used to express it was elegant beyond human comprehension. My fold collapsed. Everyone dissolved except me. I took her to Joseph. He's been alive for longer than anyone knows, walking between worlds since before the Mormon pioneers found New Zion. He looked at the child with ancient sadness. "Another failed transcendence," he said quietly. Her people tried to fully merge with their fold, to become one with dimensional space itself, but they went too far, lost cohesion. She's the only survivor. What do we do with her? We raise her, teach her to be human, or at least human adjacent. She can't return to a fold that no longer exists. So now I have an interdimensional refugee as an adopted daughter. I call her Lucy, though her real name is a complex equation involving the square root of negative infinity. She's learning to see in only 3 dimensions, to experience time linearly, to be singular instead of quantum superpositioned. It's hard for her, like asking someone to voluntarily blind themselves, but she's adapting. She goes to school in Salt Lake City, where the other kids think she's just weird. They don't know that when she solves math problems, she's literally reaching into mathematical dimensions and pulling out answers. They don't know that she sees their possible futures spreading out like fractal trees. They don't know that sometimes, when she's scared or lonely, she phases partially out of reality, becoming translucent until I coax her back. The work is hard. Existing in multiple dimensions takes its toll. I age slower than normal humans, but faster than true bridgewalkers like Joseph. My hair is going gray at 39, not from age, but from dimensional stress. Sometimes I wake up and don't remember which reality is my original one. Sometimes I see my own death in 17 different ways, all equally real, all happening simultaneously in different dimensions. But I also see wonders that no normal human could imagine. I've watched civilizations rise and fall in the space of a heartbeat. I've had conversations with beings made of pure thought. I've stood in cities where music is architecture and color is currency. I've seen the universe from angles that don't exist in 3-dimensional space, and through it all, I maintain my duty: protect and serve. Just now, my jurisdiction includes dimensions that don't officially exist. Director Chen says they're building a proper organization around us bridgewalkers. The Dimensional Highway Patrol, she calls it with a completely straight face, will have official protocols, training academies, even a pension plan that accounts for nonlinear aging. It sounds absurd, but then again, so does everything about my life now. The salt flats look different to me now. Where others see white desolation, I see a shimmering web of possibilities. 17 cities existing in the same space, thousands of fold roads crossing dimensions, millions of potential futures spreading from each moment. And in the middle of it all, travelers driving their mundane vehicles on their mundane journeys, never knowing how close they come to transcendence or oblivion. Sometimes they see glimpses. A city on the horizon that shouldn't be there. A road that seems to lead somewhere impossible. Figures walking in the salt where no one should be. Most dismiss it as mirages, heat distortion, tired eyes playing tricks. But some pull over, some investigate, some step off the highway and into the fold. That's when I intervene, sometimes to rescue, sometimes to guide, sometimes just to ensure they're making an informed choice. Because that's what Joseph taught me, what the whole New Zion incident proved. Choice is what makes us human. Even when faced with paradise, even when offered transcendence, we must have the right to say no. Whitman still calls to me sometimes, his voice echoing across 17 dimensions. He shows me visions of what I could become if I fully integrated, if I gave up my anchor to linear reality. I could be a goddess of the fold, existing in all times and places simultaneously. I could reshape reality itself, create new cities, new dimensions, new forms of existence. But then Lucy asked me to help with her homework, struggling to understand why humans can only perceive time moving forward. Or Jennifer calls, excited about rescuing another lost traveler. Or I get a thank you letter from someone I helped return from the fold, telling me about their wonderfully ordinary life. And I remember why I choose to remain partially human, partially limited, partially blind to the full spectrum of existence. Because someone needs to stand at the border. Someone needs to help people choose. Someone needs to patrol the impossible highway between what is and what could be. My name is Sergeant Rachel Blackwood. I'm a Utah Highway Patrol officer. I'm a bridgewalker. I'm a mother to an interdimensional refugee. I exist in 17 realities simultaneously while trying to maintain a Netflix subscription in just one. And every day, I drive I-80 through the Bonneville Salt Flats, watching for mirages that aren't mirages, cities that shouldn't exist, and travelers who need help finding their way home, whichever home they choose. The salt flats stretch endlessly in all directions, white and desolate and beautiful. Most days, they're just salt. But some days, when the light is right and reality is thin, you can see them, the cities, the possibilities, the paths between worlds. If you ever drive through and see something impossible on the horizon, you have a choice. You can dismiss it as a mirage, a trick of light and heat, or you can pull over, investigate, maybe even step through into something beyond human comprehension. Just know that if you do, someone is watching. Someone is ready to help if you get lost, to guide you if you're confused, to bring you back if that's what you choose, because that's my job now. I patrol the spaces between spaces, the roads that exist and don't exist, the boundaries between human and post-human. I'm the cop who tickets speeders in reality while simultaneously preventing interdimensional wars. I'm the one who helps lost children find their parents while also negotiating with entities that predate the solar system. It's a strange job, an impossible job, a necessary job. And despite everything, despite existing in 17 dimensions, despite aging at non-standard rates, despite having an equation for a daughter and seeing my own death in multiple timelines. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Because someone needs to stand guard at the thin places. Someone needs to ensure that transcendence remains a choice, not a trap. Someone needs to patrol the impossible highway. And until someone else steps up, that someone is me. So if you're ever driving through Utah and you see the impossible, remember, you're not crazy. The mirages are real. The cities exist. The fold is calling. But you always have a choice, and I'll be there to make sure of it.